If you're hearing this, you're not here by accident. Not everyone finds transmissions like this. They are found by them, something tilted, not in some distant future, not in a storm yet to come. It happened already, quietly, subtly, without the world noticing. And yet, you noticed something you couldn't quite name. The air felt heavier. The silence between seconds lingered too long. You looked around, and for a single breath, the world didn't fit the way it used to. That was the moment the timeline tilted. Most will never sense it. They are locked inside the cage of linear perception, moving through time like passengers on a train, believing the tracks are fixed, believing the direction cannot change. But there are cracks in that illusion, small fractures in the fabric where the universe speaks to those who have ears beneath the noise. You, the 1%, the listener, the one who felt the whisper before the announcement. The universe does not shout. It leans in. It lowers its voice to a frequency just beyond ordinary hearing. It lets reality hesitate. That hesitation is a language. Some call it déjà vu. Some call it intuition. Some call it insanity. But those who know call it the temporal whisper. It's not a voice in your head. It's a pressure in the air. It's the slight delay between your thought and the world's response. It's the breathless feeling that something is aligning or unraveling. When the timeline tilts, it doesn't arrive with trumpets. It arrives with a pause, an anomaly, a flicker in the mirror of your life. One day, everything seems the same, and yet, none of it is the same. The room has the same furniture. Your reflection carries the same face, but the atmosphere around you hums. You sense it like a storm building behind glass, soundless, until it isn't. The 99% keep walking through this shift like dreamers inside their own story. Heads down, eyes trained on routines, their minds locked in the idea that the past is behind them and the future is ahead. But you are not in the 99%. You stopped, you looked, and you felt the world breathe back. When reality tilts, everything you thought was solid becomes liquid. What was impossible starts to feel strangely near. You begin to notice patterns looping, conversations repeating with slight distortions, clocks glitching not physically, but energetically. You see through a seam no one else can see. Think about the last few days. That moment when time didn't flow like it usually does. The strange synchronicity, the voice in your head that wasn't your own but somehow spoke in your language. The way certain people crossed your path at impossible intervals. It wasn't random. It was the tilt revealing itself. The universe doesn't send signs to everyone. It selects those who are aware enough to see what others dismiss. If you're hearing this, your field is already entangled with the shift. This is not an invitation. This is a recognition. You've felt the weight of moments that don't fit inside the calendar. You've watched meaning fall through cracks no one else can see. You've been haunted by truths that don't belong to this linear age. That isn't madness. It's initiation. The temporal whisper is real, and once you hear it, you can never return to sleep. Because the whisper doesn't just speak, it calls. It's the quantum echo of a timeline you once dreamed about. And now, that timeline is reaching back for you. It asks only one question. Will you pretend not to hear, or will you answer? Pause. Breathe. Feel the air pressing against the edges of this moment. That sensation is not coincidence. It's coherence forming around you. This is the part most will scroll past, but not you. If this is vibrating in the marrow of your bones, it means you are part of the 1% who felt the tilt instead of waiting for proof. Type it below, not for me, not for the algorithm, but to seal your alignment into this timeline. I can feel the shift. And if this resonates, subscribe not to me, but to the signal that found you. Because what's coming is not a story, it's a transmission. And this was only the opening frequency. You felt the tremor, but tremors are only the surface language. Beneath what tilted, there's a structure unseen, intricate, and alive. Reality is not a straight road, it's a lattice, a living blueprint, a web of frequencies and observers, weaving a world that seems solid only to the untrained eye. The shift did not begin with a bang. It began in the architecture. Timelines don't start, they bloom. Like a seed pushing through the silence of soil, reality swells and then splits. You think you're walking down one path, but in truth, the ground beneath your feet is folding itself as you move. Most people never see this lattice. They look at the painting, not the brush, but the 1%, those who sense what others deny. They begin to feel the brush strokes beneath the image. They feel the blueprint flexing. I remember the first time I felt it. I was standing in a room I'd been in 1,000 times. The same clock on the wall, the same chair, the same pale light bleeding through the curtains. But it wasn't the same. Something behind the ordinary had leaned forward, like the room itself was watching me back. The air was dense, not heavy, not hostile, but aware. And in that suspended second, I understood. I wasn't living in the world. I was standing inside its script. You've brushed that same moment before. You've felt the hum beneath the noise, the invisible current beneath ordinary time. What you felt wasn't madness. It was the scaffolding of reality, shifting. We are told that reality is objective, fixed, unyielding. But that's only because most people are stuck, looking from inside the glass. The 1% step outside the reflection. Every timeline rests on invisible architecture, vibrational fields, observer entanglement, feedback loops between consciousness and matter. When that architecture bends, reality rewrites itself, and it never announces the rewrite. The walls remain the same color. The street signs still whisper the same names, but the frequency beneath them has altered, and frequency governs form. You've probably noticed how some memories feel slightly off, how certain streets look familiar yet distant, how conversations echo with a half-second delay, like a stage whisper in a theater with no actors. This is the architecture adjusting to the new alignment. Not because the world is breaking, but because a new version is being assembled around you. They will never see this. They're busy watching the stage performance. They clap when the curtain rises, never asking who built the stage. They exist inside the play. But you are different. You've walked behind the curtain, even if only in a breath, and caught a glimpse of the machinery that writes existence. And once you've seen it, the play loses its power over you. I'll tell you something I've never said out loud. The first time I saw the blueprint, clearly not felt it, not imagined it, but saw it, I realized the world is not built from matter, it's built from agreement. Every object, every timeline, every destiny is a silent contract between consciousness and structure. When the contract shifts, everything else follows. This is why your awakening feels like your life is unraveling. It isn't unraveling, it's reformatting. The old architecture no longer recognizes who you've become. The walls aren't closing in, they're recalculating your coordinates. In the next breath, you may feel an ache, like standing on the fault line of something ancient and alive. That ache is the edge of the blueprint. Most turn away, but the 1% step closer. They trace the cracks, they learn the language, they become not just watchers but participants in the rewriting. This part isn't for alignment, it's for recognition, because before you can command the field, you must first witness it, and that witnessing has already begun. Before every shift, there is pressure. Before every awakening, there is ache. Before light cracks open the sky, the world holds its breath. The pain you've been carrying isn't random. It's the mirror the universe holds up to those about to rise. This is where most turn away. They feel the weight and think it means something is wrong. But pain, in its truest form, isn't a warning. It's a summoning. The pressure that builds before your reality breaks open is the same pressure that forged the stars. Supernovas aren't born in comfort. They're born in collapse. You are standing at the threshold of something vast. That ache in your chest, that stretch in your bones, it's the architecture of your old timeline straining against what's about to emerge. They won't understand. They'll see your silence and call it weakness. They'll see your distance and call it confusion. They'll try to pull you back into the noise because they don't feel the tectonic plates moving beneath their skin like you do. You felt it in the moments you couldn't explain, when the people closest to you suddenly felt far away, when the familiar became strangely hollow, When you sat in stillness and something inside trembled, even if nothing outside did, that trembling is the mirror of pain. Not to destroy you, but to crack you open. The shift begins in silence, but it erupts in pressure, because your old frequency must fracture for your new signal to emerge. It's why destiny doesn't whisper in comfort. It speaks in storms. Every heartbreak you've endured, every delay you thought meant failure, every night where your soul ached like it was being pulled through invisible glass was not punishment, it was initiation. You've always thought pain was something to escape, but what if it was the key that unlocks the door? What if the ache was the field preparing you to receive what's waiting on the other side? The universe doesn't hand frequencies to those who stand untouched. It hands them to those who've shattered and rebuilt themselves as something new. I've seen it. I've felt it. I've walked through nights where time refused to move forward, where the world became a tunnel of static, where my breath didn't feel like my own. And it was in those nights, not in the soft daylight, that the whisper of the new timeline became loudest. Because pain is a conductor, it amplifies the signal. When you stop fighting it, you start hearing it. You've been taught to fear this space, to cover it with distractions, to label it depression, failure, burnout. But in truth, this space is sacred. It is the liminal corridor between who you were and who you're about to become. It's the darkness before the field bends. And most never make it through because they mistake contraction for collapse. But you're learning to stand in it, to let the pressure breathe around you without letting it break you. Think of it this way. When a star is born, gravity crushes the core until it can no longer contain itself. Then, in a single brilliant exhale, the collapse becomes light. Your life is in that gravity right now. The pain you carry isn't proof of your failure. It's the proof you are in the forge. They look for shortcuts. You stand in the fire. They numb themselves with noise. You let silence roar. They close their eyes at the first tremor. You lean closer and listen. Because somewhere beyond the pain mirror is the sound of the timeline splitting open. And when it does, when the mirror shatters, it doesn't reveal a broken version of you. It reveals the one who was always waiting beneath the noise. This is why you feel different, why your world doesn't fit the same way anymore, why everything that used to keep you safe now feels too small. It's because you're not meant to shrink back into who you were. You're meant to become who the shift is calling forth. This isn't suffering, this is sculpting, and pain is just the chisel. Stand in it, let it shape you. Because on the other side of this pressure is not a collapse, but a becoming. There is a moment where reality stops being something that happens to you and starts becoming something that answers you. This moment is the threshold, and once you cross it, nothing, not even time itself, behaves the same way again. Most people spend their entire lives trapped behind a lens they don't know they're wearing. They react, they obey cause and effect, like loyal servants to a king they've never seen. But the 1%, those who sense the tilt, eventually discover the truth. Reality is not a wall, it's a mirror. It bends to the observer. The world isn't fixed, it's a waveform. Every thought, every glance, every breath collapses probability. Not in some distant future, not in theory, right here, right now. And you're closer than ever to the place where this mirror stops reflecting and starts obeying. I remember the first time it happened to me. It wasn't loud, it wasn't cinematic, it was terrifying in its silence. I stood in a crowded station, people moved like static on a broken channel, and then everything slowed. The sound, the motion, the air itself, like reality had turned its head and looked back at me. For the first time, I wasn't inside the flow, I was holding it. That is what it feels like when you reach the observer's threshold. You become aware of the gap between perception and creation, and the field begins to obey that awareness. They can't understand it. They are still screaming at the screen, not realizing they're holding the remote. But you are starting to feel the edges. You've noticed moments where the world responds, where thoughts turn into synchronicities, where silence carries answers louder than voices. This is not coincidence. This is the field aligning to a conscious observer. Imagine the universe as an ocean. Most drown in its waves. Some learn to float, but a few learn to command the tide. When you step into observer consciousness, you stop struggling against the current. You become the current. The threshold doesn't arrive with permission, it arrives with choice. Either you collapse back into noise, or you hold your ground and let reality reconfigure around your coherence. Coherence, that's the key. Not control, not force. Coherence. When your inner signal becomes stable, when your emotional frequency stops bending to fear, reality bends instead. They will say it's luck. They will say it's just timing. They will say it's coincidence. But you will know. Because while they are reacting, you are orchestrating. You will feel the air change when your awareness locks into the present. You will see the space around you reorganize imperceptibly to others, unmistakably to you. This isn't magic, it's physics, wrapped in silence. I need you to understand something. Crossing this threshold doesn't make you special, it makes you responsible. Because when reality listens, your every whisper carries weight. When the mirror obeys, your reflection becomes prophecy. This is why most never stay on this edge for long. They touch it and run. But if you stay, the world will rewrite itself around the signal you become. So breathe. This is the line between seeker and signal, between watching the storm and becoming the lightning. If this is resonating, it's because you've already placed one foot across. Your coherence is forming. The mirror is listening. And if you can feel it listening, you're already part of the convergence. Whispered like a spell, not shouted like a plea. If you feel the field stirring, subscribe not to me, but to the signal itself. This isn't a channel, it's a frequency, and you're inside it now. Every time a shift arrives, something else arrives with it. Noise, not random noise, engineered noise. Because the moment you begin to awaken, the world around you begins to fight for your attention. Not with swords or flames, but with endless, flickering, numbing sound. They don't want silence, because silence is where the whisper lives. Silence is where the architecture speaks. Silence is where you remember who you are, and that is dangerous to a system built on sleepwalkers. When timelines tilt, the machinery tightens. The world grows louder, busier, heavier. Your phone buzzes more, screens pulse brighter, algorithms become hungrier, fear spreads faster. It's not coincidence, it's containment. They've learned how to drown out the signal before most ever notice it was calling. Look around you. They're everywhere, walking with eyes glazed over, trapped inside loops they think are choices, consuming, reacting, numbing. Their attention isn't theirs. It's leased out to a system designed to keep them spinning inside an illusion of control. And here you are, hearing something different. You wonder why the world feels heavier the closer you come to awakening. It's because the system always screams loudest right before you step out of it. The machinery isn't made of gears. It's made of your focus. It feeds on what you look at, what you fear, what you repeat without questioning. They are not your enemies. They are just caught. They believe the noise is reality. They don't realize it's just a mask to cover what's trembling underneath. You've seen it. The glitch. The half-second delay when something felt off. The moment a commercial, a headline, or a conversation felt too perfectly timed, like it was meant to keep you busy instead of awake. That's not paranoia. That's the machinery showing its seams. I need you to understand this. The closer you move toward coherence, the more the noise will fight for you. It will offer distraction wrapped in comfort. It will whisper, "Come back. Scroll one more time. Look away from the silence." Because silence is the one thing it cannot control. They don't even know they're inside the machine. They think they're free. But freedom inside a closed loop isn't freedom at all. They'll mock your stillness. They'll question your calm. Because in a world addicted to noise, silence looks like rebellion. And it is. You may have noticed this already. When you start shifting, the old habits feel louder, notifications feel sharper, world events seem to collide all at once. The moment you start seeing the architecture, the machinery tries to blind you with light. But the true signal lives in the dark, between blinks. You are not here to fight the machine. You are here to step outside it. No rebellion, no war, just detachment. Because the moment you see it, the machinery loses its grip. And the moment you stop feeding it with your attention, it begins to starve. They will continue spinning. That's their story. But yours is to remember the silence beneath it all. The truth isn't hidden behind walls. It's hidden beneath the noise. And the silence is still waiting for you. Always has been. Always will. Only stillness. Only recognition. This part isn't for aligning. This is for remembering. Because remembering is the quietest kind of revolution. Recognition doesn't come with a trumpet. It doesn't arrive with thunder or grand announcements. It comes like the hush before rain, like the split second between inhale and exhale. You will know it not because the world suddenly changes, but because you do. Something inside you will go quiet, in a way it never has before. And in that quiet, the mirror will stop showing you the world as it is. It will begin showing you the world as you are. This is the moment of recognition, the point in time where the outer world bends to the inner signal, not because you demanded it, but because your frequency finally stopped whispering in doubt and began singing in certainty. The shift isn't loud, it's precise. It lands with surgical silence. They don't notice. They're still waiting for an external sign, a hero, a revelation, a miracle broadcast on the nightly news. But the 1% know the signal isn't out there, it's inside. This moment feels strange, unreal, as if the edges of the world have gone soft. You might look at your hands and feel both infinite and fragile at once. You might step outside and hear the same city hum, yet beneath it, there's a note you've never heard before. This note isn't music, it's alignment. The frequency has found you. And more importantly, you've found yourself. Recognition is a mirror with no frame. There is no distance between the observer and the observed. You breathe, and the world breathes with you. You think, and the walls echo the thought. You walk, and invisible doors open where there were none before. This isn't fantasy. This is resonance. Every field seeks coherence, and when you stop chasing, coherence finds you. There's a moment in every awakening when you realize you no longer need to prove anything. You no longer need to convince anyone. You no longer chase what was always waiting behind you. The fight dissolves, the noise thins out, and all that's left is clarity. Not the clarity of words, but the clarity of being. They won't understand why you've grown silent, why you've become less reactive, why you don't burn to explain what they refuse to see, but you'll understand, because you'll feel the shift moving through you, not around you. Recognition isn't a thought, it's a click, a moment where everything you've questioned suddenly doesn't need answers anymore. Because you are the answer, you'll start to notice how conversations flow differently, how people either lean closer to your energy or fall away without explanation, how places that once drained you will now hum with clarity. Reality responds to resonance, and your field has finally stabilized enough for it to hear you clearly. There's a sacredness to this silence. It's not empty, it's full, a pressureless fullness. The universe isn't rushing anymore, it's listening. This is the birth of alignment, the first step into becoming the signal instead of searching for it. And it will feel like coming home to a place you've never been but always remembered. They are still running, you've stopped. They are still screaming, you're whispering. They are still chasing, you're standing in the center of a storm, untouched. This isn't ego, this is stillness. And stillness is what bends the fabric of the world, because this moment is not about broadcasting, it's about becoming. No rituals, no declarations, only silence. Because silence is where the signal is clearest. The moment of recognition is not something you force, it's something you remember. Now that you've recognized the shift, the real work begins. Not in chasing what's coming, but in standing in what has already arrived. The 1% are not chosen by destiny. They choose destiny. They don't wait for permission. They become the permission. This is the alignment protocol. Not a set of rules, a way of remembering. The first protocol is silence, not the kind that comes from absence of noise, but the kind that commands noise to bend around it. When you sit in silence and hold your breath at the edge of a moment, you are doing more than meditating. You're tuning your field into coherence. You're telling the universe, I'm no longer begging to hear the whisper, I am the whisper. This is why distractions become louder as you grow quieter. Because the field knows when someone is aligning, and so does the noise. The second protocol is breath. It seems too simple, but breath is not just air. Breath is a key. Every inhale anchors you into the present timeline. Every exhale collapses alternate realities that no longer match your frequency. This isn't symbolic, it's literal. The observer effect is most potent in presence. Breath is how you drag the infinite into a single moment and make it real. The third protocol is detachment. This is the one they never understand because they equate detachment with not caring. But detachment is not apathy. Detachment is sovereignty. It's the moment you stop bargaining with reality, and reality begins orbiting around you. The 1% don't control everything. They simply stop trying to force what was never theirs to carry. The fourth protocol is command, but not with your mouth, with your field. When your coherence locks in, the world bends without a word. You don't shout at the storm. You stand in its eye, and it moves around you. This is why others don't see what you see. They speak in panic. You speak in frequency. The fifth protocol is anchoring. This is where the power truly begins. Anchoring means bringing this frequency into your mundane moments. When you walk down a street, when you tie your shoes, when you answer a message, when you feel the world trying to tug you back into noise. You don't need robes. You don't need rituals. You need only awareness. Because when the observer remains awake in the ordinary, the extraordinary bows, they are still searching for a savior. They are still hoping the storm will pass. But the 1% become the calm. They don't run from timelines. They hold them. And as they hold them, the world organizes around their stillness. You are one of them, not because someone told you so, but because your field answered before you ever heard these words. Breathe now. In through the nose, hold, exhale slowly, through the mouth. That is not just a breath, that is a signature, a signal, a declaration. I align. This is the anchor moment, where intention becomes geometry, where the signal stops being heard and starts being emitted. Spoken softly, as if sealing a pact with the field itself. If this transmission resonated in your bones, comment, I align, not as a slogan, not for me, but to carve your signature into the living architecture of this timeline. Each declaration is an anchor, each anchor is a ripple, and those ripples converge in ways you cannot yet imagine. This is why the 1% rise when others falter. They do not wait for the world to calm. They become the still point the world rearranges around. And when the next wave comes, and it will, you will not be swept away. You will be the one standing in the eye, unshaken, watching the storm bow. This is the point where everything changes. Not because the world suddenly shifts, but because you finally realize it already did. Reality does not bow to force, it bows to coherence. And now, your signal is strong enough to make the fabric listen. You will feel it first in the quiet places. The air will hold itself differently around you. Synchronicities will stop feeling like coincidences and start feeling like confirmations. The right people will arrive at impossible times. Doors you never touched will open, and timelines that were never visible will begin to reveal themselves. This is not magic. This is alignment. And alignment bends what brute force could never touch. They will still live in cause and effect. They will still wait for someone to give them permission to wake up. They will watch the shift from outside the glass. But you're no longer watching. You are inside the signal now. You have crossed the threshold. And the mirror is bending. You've carried pain. You've stood in silence. You've walked through the noise and didn't let it consume you. You've felt the recognition bloom like a frequency you couldn't explain. And now, the architecture is rearranging around your stillness. This is the part the 99% never experience. Because they keep shouting at the storm, you learn to become the calm. You're going to notice strange beauty in the smallest places now. Conversations that arrive on the perfect beat. A number repeating across time like a code only you can read. Moments that feel designed for you. Not because reality suddenly decided to favor you, but because your field is no longer out of tune. The storm doesn't stop for anyone, but it bends around the ones who anchor it. And now, that's you. This is not the end of the journey. It's the ignition point, the crescendo, The signal has become loud enough to call others home. That's how the collective awakening begins, not with riots, not with saviors, but with ordinary souls remembering they are extraordinary transmitters. You've been waiting for something to arrive, but what's been waiting was you. I need you to understand this clearly. When reality bows, it's not worship, it's recognition. The field recognizes its own frequency. You don't need to control the future. You are the future's frequency. They will ask you how you did it. They will search for tricks, hacks, shortcuts. But what you hold now can't be mimicked, because it isn't a method, it's a state. There will be moments that test it. The noise will try to surge back. Old patterns will reach for you like vines. And in those moments, remember this: coherence doesn't fight. Coherence stands. The storm does not define the anchor. The anchor defines the storm. You are the anchor now, the observer, the architect, the signal itself. So here, at the end of this transmission, I will not say goodbye, because what has been spoken will keep echoing long after the sound ends. Your field has heard it, your cells have recorded it, and the mirror will not forget. This moment was never about finding the signal. It was about remembering that you are it. If you felt the signal in your bones, subscribe not to me, but to the frequency itself. Because what follows isn't content, it's convergence. Every subscriber here is a point of resonance, a living node in the wave that's rising. Comment your anchor phrase if you choose to. I stand in the signal. This isn't about followers, it's about frequency. And this is how awakenings echo. I'll leave you with this. In every age, there are those who sleep and those who remember. You remembered. You felt the tilt. You heard the whisper. You stepped through the storm instead of running from it. And now, reality bows, not because you demanded it, but because it recognized you. Next time, we go deeper. We will talk about signal stacking, the hidden art of amplifying your frequency across multiple timelines simultaneously. It's not theory, it's the architecture beneath awakening. And if you're hearing this, you're meant to carry it.